Hello, everyone. I hope we're live. Uh, I'm Eric Nielsen, and I just want to say hello. I thank you for tuning in today. I have been trying to collect and have conversations with the people that I consider are my luminaries, people that inform my outlook on the world, people who anchor in a viewpoint that I think is important and unique and very useful. And Nigel, you're one of those people. So Nigel, I love that Nigel for me is this collection of someone who is astute and practical and has a logical, critical thinking brain, but also has a deep taproot into the mystical nature of reality, which speaks to my heart because I feel like that's the way I try to approach reality. All the great woo-woo, but grounded on the earth, and it has to be applicable and useful. So I really appreciate that you bring those medicines for me.
Yeah, you're welcome. And so, as you say, I'm actually in Hawaii, so it's early morning for me, and I need to show you. And you talk about anchored in the mystical and the two. So that's where we're recording from, where I'm sitting. And aloha. So interesting on that image, that rainbow anchors two sides, two worlds across the rainbow. The one is the mystical or the spiritual world on the one side, and across the bridge to the physical and real world on the other side. And so I personally try and honor that and not be just in one place or the other place, but to try and bridge the two places and try and bring the wisdom of the two places together to try and find that balance. Because I find too many of people around me, especially clients I see, come from very much this, they want to be in a spiritual place and they forget to anchor themselves in the physical. And that can be quite very ungrounded. So we spend more time grounding them than trying to spiritually educate them. So yeah, anyway, so thank you for the opportunity to share with you, Eric, and you do amazing work.
Thank you. And I see Randall's online. Aloha, Randall. It's been a while since I've seen you.
Hey, aloha, Randall. You recognize that view well.
Just to give context, time zone wise, Hawaii is almost, we're in the same northern hemisphere, but we're almost on the opposite sides of the planet from each other. And it's so brilliant that, and also so tenuous that we are able to have this connection, have this conversation, and actually share that conversation. Blows my mind. Blows my mind every time it
Yeah.
happens.
Yeah, so for me, this is early morning. This is like 9 a.m. We don't normally surface until about 10 or 11.
Oh
So,
yeah, and I'm ready to go to
all right.
bed. I also, one of the things I've been putting a lot of these videos out because, of course, we're going through a time of unprecedented revealing. All of our structures, all of our methods of doing things, think in a new light. They're all having the quality, their quality is being revealed by the stress, by the need of the situation. And for someone who's peering into the nature of reality, peering into the nature of our social systems, it's a field day of information if you can get through, the stress of going through the time. And 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 you have often been, you have often looked into the future and talked about where the world's going, and now something's happening. Something big is happening, and I'm curious what you've been experiencing in your own world as you've been watching this experience play out. What kind of feelings have been coming up for you?
Well, I think just going back to something you said, that we're going through a time of stress, collective stress. And I think that collective stress is very much the fear of the unknown.
Mm.
And fear, I find in anyone who's on this path and does their work, we have to first overcome fear and fear of that unknown. And Eckhart Tolle talks very much in his book about living in the now,
Yeah.
the power of now. And that is, I think we're being called into that moment so much right now to start practicing that.
Yeah.
And I personally find when I stop, well, I don't stop listening to all the newscasts, because it depends. I listen to a lot of different newscasts, mostly on the iPad. So I don't watch TV much anymore, and flip through different channels from wave on the left side to way on the right side. And they're just different universes and realities that we're looking at.
Yeah.
And they would have you really believe that their echo chamber or their bubble is their reality. And most of it hooks us in through fear. And so I think we need to really look at that fear and say, what is happening within me? This is a time, and this us in this shutdown and lockdown globally is an extraordinary opportunity for us to go into that place of inner stillness.
Yeah.
And one thing as humans, we have this unique capacity called free will. So we have a choice, and animals operate from instinct, but we have free will. And we have a choice right now whether to go into panic, into fear, into anger, whatever, or go into stillness. And this is such a great time. When else in the world's history has everyone been in that place of stillness, or opportunity for stillness? And
I can't think of one.
exactly. And it's in that place of stillness where the veils start getting thinner and thinner, the veils between the two worlds, that rainbow bridge between one world and the other.
Yeah.
And we all have the capability and capacity to see into both worlds, because we are of both worlds. We are not separated.
Yeah.
Separation is just but an illusion. And fear and anger and resentment and ego keep us in that place of separation by design. So I think as we spend more time alone or in stillness, we're finding that the integration of the I am, or the God within me, or spirit within me, we can actually hear that now. So I encourage everyone just to go into that stillness and just listen to that, and don't look for distractions. To say, what can I do to keep my busy mind busy? That's exactly what we don't want to do. We want to still that busy mind, and what a fantastic opportunity.
It's synchronized introspection, which is just crazy to have everyone on the same page, same time, in their little pods.
Yeah, and we had that global meditation on Saturday for us, probably Sunday for you, the 4th and 5th of April. And I have an image here, you want to show it, of the Schumann resonance, which is the electromagnetic field of the Earth, of the impact when we all project into stillness, into love. So let me just bring that up, because actually it's quite extraordinary that. And how do I do this? I just need to pop through a couple of things here. Bear with me as I find it.
Let's get synchronized on that.
Okay, so that's where we're kind of filming from. So enjoy it. A nice place of stillness. And those are our sunsets. And okay, those are quarantinis. For your viewers, that fruit down there is called a soursop.
I saw that post a couple of weeks ago and I died. I'm like, I haven't tasted soursop in a whole year.
Yeah, so that's a soursop, and that's with coconut milk and a bit of Bacardi rum, and that's a way to deal with this. One thing you don't want to do is you don't want to take things. And this.
You mean soursop teenies?
Yeah, our quarantinis, and then of course us who've got a bit more than others. This is the problem we're going to deal with. A month of quarantine. I'm going to need my hairdresser really seriously soon after this lot. But anyway, so that's what I was trying to get to. So that's the Schumann resonance. And what it's showing us is this here is a normal background frequency of the planet. And that's kind of steady. Here is when we started getting into this global meditation on the 5th, wherever this was recorded. And that shows it's there. It's actually quite extraordinary, the power of collective prayer or collective meditation or collective silence can do. So, you know, those of us in the spiritual path, we kind of have a gut feel about this, but we always, okay, well, I have an engineering background, I want proof, and I need to have some evidence, and here's the evidence of that. And so we have, I say we have this extraordinary opportunity, and if one looks at these graphs going forward now, they still are a lot of this white space happening, meaning that this is holding, this energy is holding. And if we can hold this energy collectively around the planet, our reality will change. It's unavoidable. So we don't need to go back to the old reality, the old world, which just doesn't serve us anymore. So that's why I say earlier on, we have such an opportunity to change reality and create a new construct, as the Matrix would say.
It's amazing when you delve into into the spiritual practices to have a piece of material evidence like that helps you calibrate your action with some real world result. It's so brilliant. Whenever you get those, it really helps ground that sense of the world into you. You know, it's like, oh, it works.
Yeah. And I think it's really helpful to know every single person makes a difference. Because it's so easy at this time, we're sitting isolated in our homes to say, well, what difference can I make? Every single person makes a difference. And if you're feeling miserable, you'll make a miserable energy resonance on the planet. You're feeling joyful and hopeful and encouraging, you'll make that energy on the planet.
Yeah.
And we have a choice. We can choose to be miserable or we can choose to be joyful. We actually do have a choice. So I know which one I'd rather choose.
I've been seeing a graphic go around like wildfire on the internet in the last 2 days. It's kind of the circles where it's the decision you make between being in fear and growth. and I've seen people post it everywhere. You know, it's very popular. It's been everywhere. But I've also seen people have this very strong reaction to it.
Yeah.
Almost as if they're upset that they would be expected to be joyful when they're not necessarily feeling their access to that.
You know, we become very attached to our, what I call our petty worlds. And, you know, because, well, my crisis was many years ago at age 35. And I was very attached to my ego and my petty world and my outer world. I was very, very much hiding and suppressing my inner world. And I think that's what happens when we actually are not prepared to confront who we are in many, many instances. And that suppressing who we are in the body of work I do is really, you know, going back to the movie The Matrix again, is really how we're conditioned to be in the Matrix. And, you know, in your audience, I know there's quite a few gay people listening in. We just don't fit in that construct. And we have to, a lot of people are going through or have been through suffering trying to fit the construct and then hit a point of crisis and say, that construct doesn't work for me anymore. I'm leaving that construct. And that's when we leave that construct is where we find that freedom and that inner peace, and we just get on with life. So I think what's happening now with this coronavirus, a lot of people in that stillness are having to actually question their construct and say, does this construct work for me? Does having 3 jobs just to pay for basic food and rent, does that work for me anymore? And fear, when we break through fear in Chinese medicine, that feeds and fuels anger. And we got to be careful, Lex. We might see an angry backlash, an angry reaction, especially to our world leaders about being locked down and the way we've been, let's say, led in this very restrictive world up to this point. And I urge people when they go into that place of anger is not to project the anger outwards, but to take that anger and process it inwards. It's a very powerful energy and it can be very destructive or it can be very transformational. And as we know, one word said in anger can damage and ruin a whole relationship. And it's just really, and we're being challenged at the moment. Because again, in Chinese medicine, in that 5-element cycle, anger controls the ability to show empathy and sympathy, the co-cycle. And so we've got to remember that when I'm angry, what I'm actually angry about and who am I angry with, invariably itself. So I have to own that anger. I can't project it onto you or onto anyone else. Of course I can, but that is a mistake. So how do I own it and how do I process that? And that's a wonderful time to do this now. So Eric, likes of you and me and others who are doing this work, who have done this work, now's our time to shine and step up and actually take people through this. And when we're setting this meeting up or this interview up, I mentioned that we in the LGBTQ plus community are better equipped at this than maybe the major population at the moment is. And why I said that is we've been through this stuff. We went through it, what, in the 70s with HIV/AIDS, the epidemic then. And that community was very much marginalized. And there was an enormous amount of fear in the community, and the rest of the world didn't really care. So we've had to go through it. So we've learned to have compassion. We've learned to hold that space. Yeah. And now it's our time to step forward and hold that space for others. We're going through a similar fear of the unknown. There is no cure at the moment. And our community's been through that. So that's why I say I think we're better equipped. But let's use that wisely. Let's not be smug about it, but actually support others going through their time now. And say they will get through this. You know, and show that compassion. Because we have, I say, we haven't an option to be angry at the world, or we have a choice to be compassionate. Because anger, when we resolve that also in Chinese medicine, feeds and fuels love, joy, and happiness. So when we break through this, there is a joyful world waiting. There always is.
I feel like when I witness anger come up in my clients, especially when it's there's a couple ways I think of it sometimes. One of them is that a person's emotional immune system is kicking in. You know, a boundary might be activated. It's usually a step up in power level from being powerless or afraid. You know, a fear is kind of a creative focus on what you don't want to have happen, and sometimes anger is that thing, that bit of lava that kicks you up and out of a powerless state. And I appreciate what you're talking about. Also, I think of cell respiration. You know, when cell respiration, you have particles being broken down, you know, chemicals being broken down, and their power is being released in a controlled way. And when it just explodes, you know, you can have spontaneous combustion. You know, and anger can be that same thing where the dynamic action that comes up with it can be used and channeled in an energetic, in a refined way, where it can explode and destroy everything. You know, if you can't.
Yeah, we can go into that place of crisis. Well, there's some feedback happening on this network. Anyway, and we often hear that we have to often go through breakdown before we get breakthrough. And we're seeing a collective breakdown potentially happening at the moment. And all the work of Stanislav Grof, the great transpersonal psychologist, you know, he says we need to go through spiritual emergency first. And when you understand the why, you remove the why at the end of emergency, you're left with emergence. So we're going through that collective why. Why are we feeling this emergency at the moment? Let's understand it. Let's go into stillness. Let's process that. And we have spiritual emergence coming out the other side. So that's our opportunity to go into spiritual emergence and raise the vibrational frequency, as that Schumann resonance showed. It can be done.
By the way, Randall is very curious about how the Schumann graph was created, and he said, "Could you explain a little bit more to me how that graph comes to be? Do you know how it's generated by chance?"
No, I don't know. There's this. All I know, this fellow Schumann, and it's going back way back a few decades. They measure the resonance frequency of the planet. It's electromagnetic frequency of the planet. So I'm not sure exactly what instruments they use or at what point it's measured. But it's recognized as a sort of definitive form of measurement of the resonance frequency. and it always hovers around a certain point, which is our normal level. And when you have a collective meditation or collective crisis, it does create that change in vibrational frequency. So with that big band of white we saw on it, that was that frequency of love causing that through that collective meditation.
And if you look at a 30-day graph, there are pulses that happen along the graph maybe in a 3-day cycle period. But
Yeah.
that was particularly powerful, potent pulse there that was recognized.
And you can go back a bit on that graph as well. And but for the people, there's a great thing about Zoom and social media and what have you at the moment, and people sitting at home either bored or doing their inner work. That groups are coming together. Hundreds, thousands are coming together at the moment around the world to do these meditations. And each time a group will come together, depending on the size of the group and the energy, you will see these blips happening along that graph. So I think we're seeing a lot more activity on the graph at the moment, which is showing people are really stepping up at this time and taking ownership for their work and for their own the space they find themselves in.
Mm. I've been very fascinated with the magnetosphere lately. I've been talking about it on a couple of these shows. The last 2 years, we've been able to measure the energetic flow of the planet in an unprecedented way. They launched a spacecraft recently that has four little probes that move through that magnetic envelope, record all the little fluctuations across. Basically, it's a 3D view of what's happening in the magnetic field. And it's like as the sun sends energy to the planet is in a process of both probably being driven by particles. The magnetic field is kind of connective flow with them. And on top of that, you've got the planet demonstrating for us how to incorporate what's coming at us, how to digest it almost. And I think that that's a great macrocosm for what's happening for us at a microcosm level, because we have these waves of collective energy happening, but there's an energy flow within us that helps us integrate that.
Yeah. This is the Eric geek coming out.
Yeah.
So I'm sure what you say is absolutely right. I try and just go more into the feeling of it and not try and understand it.
Yeah.
And I personally find the more I try and understand, the more I'm put into my headspace and the more detached I become from that other world, the world of spirit.
Yeah.
So while I'm interested and I'm curious, I let other people who are smarter than me deal with that. That's like, and there's a lot of stuff on the internet around all this, the impact of the solar flares and what have yous on the planet and how it impacts us personally.
Yeah.
So
this for me, it's kind of a metaphor for how when we are connected, when we're tapped in, when we're connected to the life energy, the universal energy flowing through us, when we're grounded in our bodies, then we do have the kind of I don't call it, it's not just protective shield, it's that we are integrated in a way that we can digest what's happening.
I want to reframe that just very slightly. And I want to say, when we stop being disconnected from the world around us, we remember to go into stillness and remember we are always connected, whether we like it or not. So we stop forgetting that. Okay? And this work we're doing, Eric, it doesn't take effort. It's natural because that's who we are. We're these spiritual beings. What takes effort is to keep my mind busy, surfing from one site to the next site on the internet. That's what keeps me busy. That's what takes energy and effort. You know, we stop doing that. The rest is easy. It comes naturally because that's who we are naturally.
Yeah.
But that doesn't, of course, serve our master of capitalism. So we decide which do we want to serve here.
No, I'm not an altogether, like I am a fan of capitalism in some forms. I do appreciate some of the freedoms. Could you? But I feel like we're going through a. Well, I say that I feel like the system serves and it solves some real problems that other systems don't necessarily solve. But I feel like we're going through this transformation where we're breaking it apart and creating it is something completely new. Like we're taking pieces that work and letting the stuff that doesn't work fall away.
Yeah, we can say that. You know, I've lived in I've lived in 4 countries across 3 continents.
Yeah.
So I've lived in other systems. So for your viewers, I'm actually originally from Tanzania. I was born there, or Tanganyika, before the revolution. That was a 1964 revolution. And then we left to South Africa, which of course was a very artificial apartheid structure, just legalized discrimination, which is a very false kind of environment. And then from there, I moved to Australia, which is a social democratic structure. Similar, you don't hear much about it in the US news, but it's similar to Canada and some of more of the Nordic countries in its structures. And then to the US for the last 8 years. So all of those are capitalistic structures, but they have different kinds of underlying philosophies. And certainly Australia, I found very balanced its social democracy there, where it made sure that no one was left behind.
Yeah.
And for me, that's when capitalism can really, really serve the collective good of the planet, is using the free market and our skills and our inspiration and entrepreneurship to help uplift the lives of all, not just me.
Yeah.
And that's where that balance is. And I think what we're seeing, and you know, I'm not the only one saying this, but we're all saying this in the moment, that the coronavirus does not discriminate. Here we have Boris Johnson, the Prime Minister of the UK, fighting for his life right now in intensive care in hospital in England.
Mm-hmm.
There's no discrimination on this, and I think it's a wonderful leveler for that. And I just hope out of this that we come out of it with an open heart, and we stop judging, we stop discriminating, and we find that place of inner peace, that place of stillness, a place of compassion, a place of love for all of humanity. Because I am not separate from you, Eric. I'm not separate from your viewers. I'm not separate from this microphone we're using, from the pot plants. It isn't within me, it's within you.
Yes.
So the separation creates that anxiety, it creates that stress that people are feeling, as that sense of separation.
Can you hear me okay with this?
Yeah.
Or, okay.
Yeah, no,
I'm trying to troubleshoot some sound issues real quick.
Yeah, it's a bit better. It's a bit better with that. You were kind of down a bit of a echo pipe before.
Yes, good. One thing that really stuck in my head was someone described talking about the metahuman, a society. You know, if you consider that we are all cells in a giant tissue, you know, that the illness of one, when it comes to community health, the illness of one pocket of cells vastly can affect the health of the entire population. And I think we're seeing that. I think that was always a principle, but when you have a virus that is incredibly, you know, can be transmitted very easily, then suddenly that gets magnified, and the reality that inequality in people, the healthiness of people, makes everyone unhealthy. So I think that's something that's really coming forward right now as an expression of what you're talking about.
Well, we kind of remember that physical health or disease is the last thing to manifest after mental health, emotional health, psychic health, spiritual health. So when we see it manifest on the physical level, we know we are diseased at all other levels, because that's the last to manifest. And that's why the Schumann resonance thing is so important, that we can see that we can raise that vibrational frequency, that not all of us need to succumb to this physical dis-ease that so many are succumbing to. So yeah, I just think it's a great mirror. You know, it's very uncomfortable for many, but they say what, 30–50% of people are symptom-free. The virus just passes through them. So it'd be interesting to, you know, maybe in the future when someone's bored or as a grad student or so can do a research paper and say, tell them, let's find out about this, how it affected people and why it was some symptom-free and others not. Who knows? What was the dis-ease they were carrying within them that created the symptoms, worse in some people, not in others? I don't know. I'll just be fascinated if there's any correlation.
Yeah.
Would there be dis-ease on a physical level? You know, I'm sure people say, oh, but I've got health issues. Well, why have you got health issues? Because they're just a physical manifestation of lack of health at the emotional, mental, spiritual levels.
Yeah.
So it comes back to this concept of personal responsibility. And again, sort of the body of work I do is around really encouraging people to take personal responsibility. And we've been taught very much in the society, hand responsibility over to others for our well-being. And of course, what's the shadow side of that is the victim. I'm a victim. And, you know, lawyers, that's how they make their money, feeding off the victim. In many cases, I'm not saying all of them, obviously the other form of legal contracts. But how do we stop playing that victim? And you know, I say before my coming out crisis, age 35, I felt I was a victim. But that didn't serve me. Eventually, my world just kind of crashed, and I had to take responsibility for who I am, what I am, and how I see myself, not how others see me. They'll only see me how I see myself. And as an executive director of a large corporation at the time, I became an absolute arsehole and I got fired for it. But that was my responsibility. I became unmanageable. And then thereafter, the transition was extraordinary thereafter, but I had to go through that crisis. No, I don't. So the work I do is say to people, we don't all need to go through crisis to evolve. In fact, it's better not to go through crisis to evolve. Spirit doesn't have to be ruthless to us. We can actually evolve without having spirit being totally ruthless.
Please describe this very. I love this range of the way that spirit talks to us that you described to me before. It's so insightful. Once you put that in my head, I constantly ask myself, like, am I listening to the sweet whisper of spirit, or am I listening? Am I begging the coyote to come and bite me?
So that's really of Carlos Castaneda and his body of work, and it's the teaching of Don Juan and the art of stalking. Now, most people see stalking as a negative connotation, like peeping through someone's bathroom window. But in the Toltec traditions or Toltec teaching, stalking is an extremely important concept, and we have to become an impeccable stalker in order to spiritually evolve. So what does that mean? And I'll use a metaphor here. Let's have little Johnny's a little pesky little brat, and he's busy tugging away at the cat's tail. And so the first thing mum will do, she'll be sweet with him. Say, Johnny, please don't pull the cat's tail. The cat doesn't like it. And then we'll see what happens. And so that's the first part of stalking, is sweetness. And she'll wait, and she'll wait. And so the second part then is that patience. She'll wait patiently to see what happens. But little Johnny still carries on pulling the cat's tail. The cat's getting really quite annoyed. And so what would the mother do next? So she's been sweet, it hasn't helped. She's been patient, it's certainly not helping. So what would the next phase be? Let's see how good the homework here was for you. Yeah.
Well, I know what to begin.
As in behavior, what would the next behavior be? Not necessarily the word for it. I'll give you the word.
Well, it would probably be ever increasing sternness. You know, there might be an appeal to authority, like listen, better stop that or else. And then at some point, it's right. It just comes down to the cat's claws. You know, at some point, mom's not even in charge. It's the cat going, "Meow," you know, because mom is probably protecting the kid from the consequence. At some point, the consequence comes up and bites him in the arm.
Okay, I'm going to send you off to mother's training school. So the next, so the next phase is what's called cunning. Look, Johnny, look, there's a birdie over there. Look, there's a birdie there. Or look, let's go and have an ice cream, or let's go and do something. She'll try and draw his attention elsewhere, away from the cat. So the next stage is cunning. Okay. So the spirit at the moment is being cunning with us, this coronavirus. It's drawing our attention away from our very busy, hectic worlds. And this is part of cunning. We're right in it. Okay, and I want people to know that. Because if we don't pay attention, if little Johnny still pulls that cat's tail, what you said is what happens next. And it's called ruthless. It's that big smack. And we don't need to go there. The collective ruthless is not going to be a good look. Okay, so we're in the point of cunning. Now, I've been doing this work for 25 years. I know I always engage with people at that point of cunning. Having been through the ruthless myself, it's not a good place to be. It's not a nice place to be. So the fact we're having this interview now, it's exactly that point of cunning for your listeners, viewers to go within and say, okay, I'm hearing this now. What do I need to do within to resolve stuff within me? Because people watching this will be on the spiritual path, otherwise they won't be watching this. That's how this is set up. Okay, they may not even know they're on the spiritual path. I think most of them probably do, but some won't even know it. They'll think, oh, I'm just curious. But they're curious for a reason. Okay, and this point now is a point of cunning, where we have to go in and say, what do I need to do to take responsibility for how I view the world, and what is my relationship with the world and to myself, and heal that. Because if we don't, next stage is that slap, that ruthless. And that ruthless comes in disease, exactly where we're sitting. Cancers, viruses, car accidents, divorces, deaths in the family. That's where the ruthless comes. So we don't want to go there. So that's why the art of stalking is so important. And why I say to support someone on their spiritual path, when it's become an impeccable stalker, what that means is you become the chameleon. That you take no attachment to where that person is. Because emotion is a thing which pulls us down on the spiritual path. Stone coldness is not the same as harshness or negativity. It's pure love. Okay, so I have no attachment to emotion. So
Okay.
I can see totally clearly. I can be the impeccable warrior in the moment. That's what stone coldness does. And in that moment, I can act exactly how you need me to act for your benefit, with no attachment to my ego or to myself in the process. Okay? Otherwise, if I'm acting towards you, expecting an outcome for me, I'm not stalking impeccably. I'm not stone cold yet.
So it's kind of a type of equanimity that allows you to maintain your own inner balance while being with what someone else is going through. Is that kind of what you mean by stone coldness, or is there?
Yeah, it's total detachment, equanimity. It holds totally a place of stillness, just holding a place of stillness. And the work that we do, you and me and others, is just hold that container for people without any judgment, not in discrimination, because in that place of lack of judgment is when pure compassion takes place. And this is the paradox in this stuff. You will know this as you go through. the more we do our spiritual stuff, the more paradoxes appear in life. Because the harder I try, the less I achieve. The more I try and help you, the less helpful I am.
Yeah.
The more I try and rescue you, the more I screw up your karmic path. And I take on your karma process. So it's getting to that place. It's the paradox, which is quite a challenge for us often, but it's holding back and allowing that person just to be in that place where they can heal, because healing comes from within the person. I'm not the healer. I'm the holder of the container. I don't do the healing. The person does their own healing. If I think I'm the healer, I'm being terribly arrogant.
So to go back to what you said, when a person has to contend with their responsibility, I think that, you know, some people, they see what's happening and it's very easy for them to slip into either a fear or despair perspective on the world. You know, there's a lot in the first few days of this, first few weeks of this happening, you saw a lot of people saying, oh, you know, the earth is really showing us, or the earth is this kind of earth is punishing us mentality. I saw a lot of that going, and some of it maybe a step up into power. A lot of it had the ring of a kind of hopelessness in some way. And so when you say contend with your, with your responsibility, what allows a person to go into a creative state, a powerful state, as they are contending with this? You know, what lets the person, not get stuck in despair, not get stuck in hopelessness in that process?
Okay, can I bring up this path to freedom model that the guide gave me?
And while you're doing that, I just want to tell you, Angie Malou says, aloha, Eric and Nigel, and Bev Duplessis says, hello from South Africa, enjoying the conversation.
Hey, from good old South Africa, who found it? Yeah, very good. Okay, that day, I want to bring that up. So in fact, before I do that, I want you to be honest with yourself. You don't have to share it with me or your audience. And I want your audience to be honest with themselves as well. Is what emotional place are you and they in right now as individuals? Is there fear? Is there anger? Is there hopelessness? Is there resentment? Is there frustration? Is there selfishness? Is there love? For people just to go within just for a moment and really get a sense of that and just own it. There's no judgment in that, because all of them are equally valid. Because what I want to do in the next graphic is we're going to plot where that is. And that's going to show quite a bit around this personal responsibility issue. Okay, so you know where you are, Eric?
Yeah, I can tell you which emotions I've been feeling.
Okay, great. So you can hold those unless you want to share them, but you don't need to.
Oh, well, okay.
So on this graphic here, this is a path to freedom model. And this here, the guides gave me in Hawaii. Doing this kind of work in Hawaii is actually great. The kahuna energy, or the elders in spirit, the medicine men in spirit, it is very, 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 very close to this realm. And if there's certain places on the island, I'm on the big island, where one can really connect in with that energy. So this model was given to me. And what it's really saying, there's two axes. I want to look at this axis here. It's a bit covered up because I'm halfway through the model here and I'm showing it to you. I'm not going to step through the whole thing. But this is called society's expectations. Is behind this. It's blocked up here.
Okay.
And society's expectations and how we expect to perform in society. And conformance to compliance is how we expect to behave.
Okay.
To rules and to regulations. And if you don't behave that way, we're held there through fear. Okay, so the energy of fear holds us in conformance compliance, fear of being sued, fear of going to prison, fear of being judged. That's how society holds us in the place. That's how the matrix stays there. On the other hand, we want to, as free-spirited beings, because we're incarnated as free-spirited beings, that's who we really are, We want that independence and liberation, not independence as the me, ego stuff, but independence from the sphere, from conformance, compliance to things which don't make sense. And it takes courage to do that. Okay, so it takes energy of courage, and we've been called upon, all of us, to find the courage within to step out of fear. And when we find that courage, what this axis is saying is that we then become ambivalent to whether we are in conformance and compliance or the independence. That's an important part. It's one of those paradoxes. Okay, when I'm in a place of independence and liberation, when I'm in a place of spiritual stillness, I'm okay driving on the left-hand side of the road. It's okay. It makes sense. Or on the right-hand side of the road, and it depends which country I come from at the moment. I'm okay having certain rules. That's okay. So I become ambivalent to that. I can then use that ambivalence to go into deep discernment rather than discrimination or judgment. I can go to a place of deep curiosity, which is a discernment, saying, why is that rule actually being created? Is it there to control someone, or is it there to support someone? Okay, so that's what that horizontal axis is about. And we need to find that in the stillness to be able to discern that. But it takes courage to go there initially, and then we can fall backwards and forwards. The vertical axis, I call soul energy. This is the soul aspect, the soul self. And we come in up here as spiritual beings, completely in the place of integration, the I am, the God self, the spirit self. We incarnate knowing what our purpose is. We forget it really quickly as babies, as infants, but we actually come in. That's why we come in. And I'm going to digress for one moment here. In the LGBTQ plus community, we say, oh my goodness, why on earth did I choose to be born like this? And then you get a lot of churches and people say, well, being gay is a choice. And we have to contend with that. And I say, yes, it is on one hand, and no, it's not on another hand. Why I say that is the yes, it is I believe we have a soul contract, preconception, and preconceptions out here on the field outside. And we then choose to say, I'm going to live this incarnation, this lifetime, in my case, as a white male gay. That's the choice I'm going to make, born in Africa, and whatever I have to go through. So I go look for the ideal parents. We have the soul contract. What's her name? Mace? MYSS, put my first name for a second there. Anyway, she talks about this in Soul Contract. She's a great book on that one. And so I have the soul contract with my parents, with my friends, with my community, with my tribe, and we all part of the same tribe here. And once conception takes place, I am now fixed. It's no longer a choice. Preconception's a choice. So from that perspective, I say, yes, we do have choice. Once conception is, I don't have a choice. I can't suddenly say, you know what, I've actually just had a quick look down before I'm born, and that African village, they seem really, really happy and content and free just running around. I want to be a little black kid in this little village there, just having a simple life. Too late. I don't have choice anymore. I've been conceived. I'm coming through those parents, and that's it. Okay, so we come in this place here. So that's the I am. So I come in with that purpose, in my case, what we chose. So we then go through very quickly, we end up going to this place of separation. The whole matrix gets hold of us, society gets hold of us. And that separation is important initially so we can actually function in the society in which we're born. Otherwise, we just, we actually don't have a point of reference for society. So it keeps me safe.
Yeah.
But this is an important part. And I really want to discern the difference between religion and spirituality. Okay, I believe all the great religions are based on spirituality, but many of them get led through greed and power along the way, get this, misled. And this separation down here is a separation from soul self. It's what a lot of religious institutions do to us. It's through guilt. We become separated from the soul aspect. So the place you can totally control people is down here, this third quadrant, when you have rules and regulations and separation with meaninglessness down there. That's when you control people. That's the matrix down here. So we come in quadrant 1, we go through quadrant 2 as small children. We then get separated from our soul aspect, our soul self, and we end up down here in this meaningless quadrant. And that is where most of society finds itself. And I think we're collectively going through this. So I asked you and your audience to think about the emotion. Down here is anger, resentment, powerless, and ashamed. And you used the word powerless a moment ago, which triggered me to say, let's just use this model then for personal responsibility. How do we reclaim our power? Okay, because the opposite end of this is freedom. Now, there is no way of getting from 3 to 1 directly without doing our inner work. Society is designed to keep us here. When we break out of this conformance to compliance, we end up over here, this quadrant 4, independence and liberation, but still in separation. That's where the great ego takes place. And we're seeing many of our world leaders, without naming too many of them, but we know who they are, in that place of insensitivity, selfishness, greed, ego. They believe they're independent of the system. I ended up in there in my own company, before I had my own crisis and breakdown. And it was from there I was propelled out of it, because I had to do my inner work to find the God within me, to find that purpose, and to then come back here, that place of inner peace, a place of freedom. Okay, so that's kind of what that looks like. And in the little corner, you probably can't see that, but anyway, that's what the total model is. As a whole model gets built up. But
if you take it off the screen share, then your picture will be bigger and they might be able to see it. But I really love this chart. I love meaningless being at the bottom, because it really frames the whole conversation of what happens when.
Yeah. So I just want to go back to that for a moment, because some people will be feeling frustration, quite a lot of frustration. I'm frustrated, as opposed to fear. Fear or anger, resentment is frustration. It's a different energy. A lot of people who that's where the activism sits up there. And that energy of frustration is based on, it's a conformance to compliance, having to comply to rules and regulations. But why am I doing this? They're pointless, they're stupid. So we get that frustration up there.
It's like that soul energy is being constrained by the wrongly shaped structure. It's just like, get me out of this.
Yeah, a lot of people can see that they are not in the matrix. They've actually done their spiritual work, their integration. They're still being frustrated. So they haven't become impeccable stalkers yet. We're back to the art of stalking. They're still frustrated. Okay, they still have to do more inner work to become ambivalent, to find that equanimity in that space, to find that love, happiness, and compassion up there. It's in that place they can support others effectively. And this I call the place of the ambassador, where we become the ambassadors for the world. Those are the activists. Every part's needed. We need the activists to create that frustration, to push people forward. But that's where the ambassador sits, and you find the Dalai Lama and the Buddha and people like that sit there at this place. Love, happiness. They find a place of freedom, and that's where we end up either dying and going back to where we came from, or we come around again, around the cycle again, and we find that next time round we're better equipped to deal with whatever issue we're dealing with as we go around that cycle again for the next issue.
So let's say a person has that soul energy, they've been cultivating that soul energy, but they are still in this compliance frame of mind. What is a person moving towards? What are the kind of steps that a person is taking as they move from 2 to 1, as they're moving into that independence and soul energy together? Like what kind of moves would a person be making?
So the question how I'm hearing the question is, how do I find that place of inner peace? Because in that place of inner peace, it doesn't matter that I am compliant. In that place of inner peace, it's okay, I need to pay my taxes.
That's what moves a person to that independent spectrum.
And it's taking
Independent.
yeah, and it's going back to that place of personal responsibility. Is say, I chose to incarnate into this world in this time. There are no accidents. There are no by mistakes. There is no victimhood.
Hmm.
And I own wherever I am. As soon
Hmm.
as soon as we own it, we take the energetic charge away from it. When we take the energetic charge away, there is no frustration. There is no anger. There's no resentment. There's none of that. That's an energetic charge. So as soon as we own it, it just goes away. And it's like, why the heck was I so pissed off with something? It just doesn't make sense, you know. And again, in Chinese medicine, when we resolve the anger, it feeds and fuels joy and happiness. So you get so freaking angry with something or someone, you just burst out in hysterical laughter. We've all been through this. And you look back, say, and you hug and make up. Or you have great after fight sex or something.
Yeah.
And that's how that works. When we actually just own that anger, we don't keep on projecting outside of us. We own the fact that I've dreamt into my reality this coronavirus. Right now, I've dreamt into my reality. I'm sitting in gorgeous Hawaii in lockdown. You know, it's not a bad dream.
No.
But that's what I've dreamt, because I've done my inner work to dream this. And other people find where they are and use as a reflection, not as a judgment, not as discrimination. And say, okay, I'm finding myself here. What is this about? How do I make the best of it? And I don't know. That's why, Eric, anything I say is, how do we stop judging? You know, me being brought up and raised in school in apartheid South Africa, where we judged absolutely everything, including being gay, was highly judged, and I could have ended up in prison had I come out. And hence, that's what led to my whole breakdown and meltdown, is, you know, unable to express love. And love is just a natural part of who we are. And that's when my crisis and breakdown happened because of that at age 35. And I got fired as a director of this company, big international company. And that's when my life really kicked off and started. And within 4 years, well, I started my own company out of that. And within 4 years, I became, effectively, my life was done from a physical point of view, you know, the material point of view. The rest just unfolded beautifully.
Hmm. So I lost a little bit of what you said because I had some compression issues on this side. But there's a question that maybe you could open up a little bit. This idea of owning it, I wonder if you could break that down a little bit more. I say that because I know that there's a kind of spiritual axiom out there that says accept what is. And I also see people get very frustrated with that because they say, okay, great, I accept it. Ah! but it isn't necessarily always a medicine for them, for some people. What is owning it? What skills are required to own it? How does someone go through the process of owning it and actually having that take hold?
Okay, I just want to see if I can bring something up here. I'm just going to bring up the slide here. This technology is fantastic, but okay. The owning it, as I said before, is finding out where is the emotion. And we had the emotions before down here in the quadrants. Mm-hmm. If I'm in anger and resentment, it'll tell me there's something, I'm sense of meaninglessness and fear happening in my life. So owning it is saying, what is it in my life which is meaningless? How did I get there? And being okay with those answers. Celestine Prophecy, again, a wonderful little book by James Redfield, helps us do that. I think it's the third insight, the greater now, helps us own how we got to where we are. And I know when I did the workshop around that, gosh, that's many years ago, decades ago, I was living in South Africa at the time, a Lifeline counselor, she was taking us through the class. I got stuck on that third insight, to the greater now. I've been brought up in a British upbringing from the colonial Britain, where you do not talk back to your elders. Little boys should be seen and not heard. And I was angry with my parents. And it was not okay to be angry with them. Remember down here was anger in that quadrant?
Yeah.
I was angry with them because I had this completely meaningless existence in my life. I was terrified of coming out as a gay man. So I was conforming, complying to the heterosexual world, which is it didn't work. So I ended up in adulthood here, and I had to sit and go through this process. I actually held up a class for about 4 weeks because I just couldn't process this. It was my crisis I had to go through. Is it's okay to love my parents, but acknowledge they did the best they can do, but some of what they did do is not okay. And I need to say, and I remember having a meal with them, and we went out a while later after I'd been through my whole growth process. And I said, Mum and Dad, they've been on this journey with me a little bit. I said, I believe that we choose our parents to incarnate through and to be born through. I said, and they was eating their meal. And I said, well, I'd like to thank the two of you very, very much for being such shitty parents. And they looked at each other and thought, what the heck just happened there? Was that a compliment or a sideswipe? I said, no, because I chose you impeccably so I could do my work, my inner work, my own inner karmic work. And that had to do with learning to love myself. So I chose them, and I know I was not an easy child for them. So I have to thank them for being my parents, putting up with me. And I had to learn to love myself. So I had to learn to go through that. So that's when I talk about owning it.
Yeah.
Own, what is it? And often it's, well, I'm not sure how one does it on one's own. It's where likes of you and me come into it to help people support and someone they can feel comfortable with and trust. We won't judge them for where they are, because judgment sits down here. And so you need to find someone sitting up there in a place of love to help bring people from this line of the control, axis of control, from control to freedom, that inner peace. So that's the best I can really say is how we own it, is identifying it, then addressing it. If we can't address it on our own, we find someone we can work with to address it, to find that freedom.
I'm thinking through, when I have clients that have a particularly strong story, especially if it's a victim story, what I have to do with them is to review the story and the kind of meanings that got created in the experience, like what they decided about life,
Right.
what they decided about people, what defining beliefs got anchored in that moment. And for me, the body is such a great ally, because sometimes that was all decided by a 6-year-old, that was decided by a 4-year-old, and it's anchored so deep that it's not even visible anymore, or it's not detectable. And when a person can kind of go back to that belief and feel into it, there's all kinds of wonderful somatic information there for a person. Like, they get feedback in their body. Their body is like the great truth detector in that department. So that's one way. Some of those beliefs, like for me, owning it is maybe getting to those beliefs and actually finding out what you created at that moment in time, what you created through those experiences, what you created about the meaning of life, and owning being a creator itself, like actually remembering that you created it, remembering the meaning that you encoded it all with.
But you come up with an important point here, and that's the blind spot or the hidden area.
Yeah.
And we all have our blind spots. We often create blind spots to hide from the world. And
it's an adaptive response. It's something that sometimes we have to edit out parts of reality to be functional in the other parts.
Yeah, the thing is, though, with the blind spot is others can see it and we can't.
Yeah.
And so how do we find a place, and there's a whole workaround, it's called the Johari window, Johari, developed by these two men called Joe and Harry, hence the Johari window. And your audience can Google that, Johari window. It's a great body of work saying, how do we navigate into that blind area with others? What do we hide from others, and what do we reveal to others? And what can others see about us, which we can't see about ourselves? And what can we see about them, which they can't see about themselves? And when we get to that place, what they call trust and respect, the two together, and that I call that place of love, trust and respect, is when growth takes place, mutual growth. That's when the we can explore, and the unexpected comes through, where the unknown becomes the known. Okay, so how do you you create that space of trust? And how is it okay to say to someone, you know what, you're picking your nose has been really quite annoying. You say, do I really do that? So you actually do that. Oh, okay. Yeah. and how I do that, by the way, is make it about myself. Saying, I really get annoyed when you do that. It's not about you, but it's about me, and I need to process that, and I need to overcome your annoyance somehow. And if it's so bad, I may have to leave the room, but that's my choice. Again, back to free will, back to personal responsibility, back to ownership, not projecting it onto you. But there are times, of course, when it's appropriate to say to someone that's antisocial behavior within a society you've grown up in, that's not okay. It's just to help protect them as well. That's also okay. That's where it comes to the stalker. Sweet, patient, cunning, ruthless. And the impeccable stalker will know exactly what to do in the moment. So while someone's offending me, I cannot be an impeccable stalker. Okay.
I found that in my early coaching career, I've had to slide along that spectrum. On one end being helping a person find their own truth, and then the other end of the spectrum being bluntly honest about what probably everyone else can see that they're not seeing. And it's definitely a range in there, and every situation kind of calls for its own place. I think I got a little stuck on the letting everyone find their own way to the truth, and I found there were some clients that I think I could have served better if I just say, this is not okay.
So a little secret though is that when you do this work and the veil between the two worlds gets thinner and thinner, one can then be trained, or comes naturally, just depends on the person. I have to be trained to then see into the other worlds, to see then guides, teachers, healers, departed loved ones in spirit. And so my little secret here is I actually don't do the work. I let them do the work, the ones in spirit. It lets me off the hook. So it's much easier saying, okay, so what do you want me to tell this person now? What would you like me to say? And it's just so much easier. And those in spirit will always transmit their message from a place of love. I'm not saying the message is always loving. It can be pretty ruthless or cunning, but it'll come from a place of love. So it's that stone coldness of spirit. So when you take the emotion out of it, you can be absolutely in love, from that place of love. So again, I urge people, this is an opportunity if they want to get into that place of real place of service for others, is start doing some of the other work as well. Like start having a clairaudience, clairsentience, clairvoyance. That's different, by the way, from psychic work. Psychic work can get one in a mess, because psychic work is an interpretation of the mind. And if my mind's polluted, I'm going to come through with a polluted interpretation of the psychic work. And certainly the training I had both in South Africa and in Sydney for, wow, probably a decade or longer with different mediums, is they would be quite ruthless with me if I went into psychic mode, because that's a cop-out. And these women, they're pretty, well, I call them power aunties. They're pretty tough cookies. So that psychic work, back off. We don't do psychic work here. We do trance work. Go into trance audience, clairaudience or clairvoyance, and bring that through. Do not use psychic work here. And that can be quite, and that becomes trust. But then, for me anyway, I needed a teacher to help me get through that process, because I, as an engineer, my background being engineering, I needed empirical proof, and it's like really hard bridging those two worlds when you want proof. And so the teachers are the ones which helped me develop that proof. What I was coming through with wasn't just my imagination.
Yeah.
So this is a long journey. I've been on this path for about 25, 26 years. Okay, it's not an overnight thing. But for many people, coronavirus is their launch point. And it's a very exciting launch point. They're being kicked off either cunningly or ruthlessly. We'll see which one it is, but no one's going to avoid it. Patience and sweet is now over.
Oh,
Into cunning and ruthless now, and we need it. The planet herself, Gaia, wants to evolve. She wants to move into 5D reality, 5D expression. She's tired of being in 3D.
as Willy Wonka once said, candy is dandy, but liquor is quicker.
Exactly.
Sometimes
But again,
you know,
one gives you a bigger hangover.
True. I would say in my life, usually I've set my spiritual preferences to learn through sweetness. But sometimes the acerbic lack of a good spiritual 2x4 just saves time. It's just like,
Yeah.
all right.
Okay, so Eric, on that one, is each of us are on different places in our spiritual growth.
Yeah.
So while I attract people who need that place of cunningness to take the next shift, you will certainly attract people who need that sweetness to get in where they are on their process.
Yeah.
Okay, so we attract exactly who we need to attract to do the work.
I'm talking about my own.
Yeah.
I mean, not,
Yeah, but you'll also attract people who resonate with that, and that's how you can be of service.
Yeah.
Okay. And so we don't. The really important thing here is not to judge one against the other.
Mhm.
Because sometimes I know during my own development phase, I used to get so frustrated. Because certainly my teacher in Sydney, she would see spirit, both the angelic realms and departed loved ones, physically as I would see you. I used to be so jealous of that. I said, don't be jealous of it. We each have our own development. We each have our own skills. We're exactly where we are. Okay. And so she would start chatting away. And I think, who are you talking to? She says, oh, sorry, I forgot you can't see them. Yeah. So those are great teachers, though. And we all, and as we know, the old saying is when the student's ready, the master appears.
Yeah.
And that's why I'm looking forward to this coronavirus event. I think many, many masters are going to appear, both in the seen and unseen realms.
Yep.
And our responsibility, personal responsibility, is to be on the lookout for them. And going back to the Toltec teachings, Don Juan and Carlos Castaneda and teachers of that, they look for omens and indicators. Be on the lookout for omens and indicators. What is the omen? What's the indicator? It could be as simple as a black raven landing on your balustrade. You say, well, I haven't seen a raven land here before. Why has that suddenly landed here? Or a hawk flies past. That's the shamanic path. And look out for these things and pay attention. Don't say, oh, nice bird, and sort of carry on with your Googling. So that's what we're being called to do right now.
I've had another teacher that I really respected. His language was very interesting. He said, spirit borrows relationships. And I think it's the same thing you're pointing at, in that your relationship to anything, whether it's a clock and the numbers that appear on the clock, or the way that the animals, the behavior of your cat, the behavior of your partner, the people around you, spirit is using every single channel to talk to you. And the more channels you have open, and the more info can come through. It's the more articulate the info can be as it comes through.
And that would be getting into cunning. The more channels are coming through, it's getting more and more cunning. And it's like, pay attention. Because if we don't, we know what happens next. Slap. So we pay attention, yeah. Are there any other particular questions your audience have got? I feel there's questions sitting there.
Yeah, there's one. By the way, Richard says, I am in surrender. I would do anything Nigel says. Richard Shemmer, he says hi.
Hey, Richard, hello. I love your photography, by the way.
He's been very creative, locked in his Berlin apartment lately.
Yeah.
Angie says, yes, sacred energy on the big island, heart sparkles. Random question says, do you think, this kind of goes back to what you were talking earlier. He says, do you think we saw these challenges coming when we chose this lifetime? Did we see these challenges? Who is running the show that we seem to see?
Okay, so Randall was the editor of my book. So he comes
Ah.
from, so he has an inside track to my thinking and to my work.
Hmm.
So I have to just tune into what Randall's question really is, because Randall has a big wooden spoon. So let's have a look. Randall, the best I can say is we brought this in with us as part of our growth. There is no separation unless we believe there to be a separation. It's not outside of us, it's inside of us. So did we come in this time to experience that? We brought it in onto the physical realm so we could experience it collectively. And each of us in exactly the right place for that. Again, that whole spectrum from people who have yet to step onto the spiritual path to those who've done quite a lot of work. We're all here to hold space and energy so we can all grow through this. You know, like I've done a lot of work on the spiritual realms, yet these kind of interviews and those kind of questions from Randall are great teachers to me. That helps me bring into perspective where I am too on the path. So we're all teachers to each other. We all respect that. And it's only that sense of me, and I'm better than you, and the fierce individualism which separates us from one with the whole. And this coronavirus is making damn sure we're all reminded that we're actually not separate from each other. And so I think we've brought this in collectively as a way of bringing us back to a place of heart, a place of love, a place of centeredness, a place of collective consciousness. And the Schumann resonance actually shows that again, what happens when you do that. And I really, really hope and believe that many people will go through the spiritual awakening, because a lot of them are in their spiritual emergency right now. What comes to that spiritual emergence, because all this questioning why, and being locked away in your home for a month is certainly going to give you a lot of opportunity to learn why. And so yes, I think we're in the Nadir, Dark Night of Soul at the moment, Nadir, on the hero's journey, Joseph Campbell's work. I think it's a very exciting time. Very exciting. You know, if this body succumbs to it, well, this body's a temporary thing anyway. Why should I fret over it? I'll be back next time to learn some more and terrorize more people. Yeah. Does that kind of answer that? Ask Randall if it answers this question.
Randall, just a message if it answered. Tell me about what, if people want to kind of follow through and go deeper into your work. Can you just say something shortly about how to go deeper into what you're talking about?
Yeah, well, I wrote that book. Let me see if I can bring up a screenshot of that. Oh, by the way, I want to bring this up first. Just see what have I got. Yeah, this is actually very cool because this is from the Native American, the Hopi prophecies. The eagle and the condor prophecy is that the eagle is the masculine, the condor is the feminine. The eagles of the North America, condor South America. And I'll read it out because it's probably quite small on some people's screens. It says, the prophecy says that when the eagle and the condor is an ancient prophecy of the Amazon that speaks of human society splitting to two parts, that of the eagle and that of the condor. The path of the condor is a path of heart, of intuition, and of the feminine. The path of the eagle is a path of the mind, of the industrial, and of the masculine. And where am I? So the prophecy says that during the next 500-year period, beginning in 1990, and I think we're seeing it already happening, the potential would arise for the eagle and the condor to come together to fly in the same sky and to create a new level of consciousness for humanity. And I think we're seeing that. The prophecy only speaks of the potential. So it's up to us to activate this potential and ensure that a new consciousness is allowed to arise. And this is great. And I think we're sitting in that place right now. So we're sitting in a place pregnant with potential, absolutely pregnant with it. And we really have a choice here. To answer your question, so I wrote this book, Your Return to Freedom, a practical guide to finding lasting inner peace, which our dear friend Randall was one of the editors for. That you can get on Amazon. Just type in Nigel Patterson Freedom. Those 3 words will bring it up. That has the whole Path to Freedom model and how that came about. It also has the whole background to it. It has how to use that model at a personal level and how to find out where you are and how to evolve through it and to find that place and what work you need to do, okay? I also did the 16-lesson online workshop around that, and that's on nigelbpatterson.teachable.com. Again, leave that up there. Or else just go to my website, nigelbpatterson.com. There's a whole bunch of stuff there. If people want to carry on at this level, as I say, clients I normally see have normally been through psychotherapy or some kind of psychology process and hasn't worked, because we're dealing with spiritual crisis here. We're not dealing with mental health issues. So people will find me because they're in a sense of spiritual crisis, even though they don't know it. That's a cunning of spirit will bring them to me. And on my website, it's how to get hold of me on that and some of the work I do around that. And because spirit guides the process, I certainly don't want people codependent upon me. So we work through the stuff really fast. Like within 8 to 10 sessions, most people are on their way, they're gone. And that's cool. So yeah, so there's many ways. Just look at the website up there. And there's a bunch of videos as well on the website. There's a tab videos on there, which shows some of the work I've done and other interviews. So that's that.
By the way, Randall says ish. He said, when I asked if he answered the question, he said ish. He said, I will talk with Nigel offline. So
yes, well, our friend in South Africa will understand exactly what that means. Yeah.
Well, this feels like a good natural landing spot. I have dinner that I'm anxiously anticipating, late night dinner.
Well, of course, it's late for you. I don't even know what the time is. Well, this has been fantastic.
11:30 here. Yeah,
it's
thank
always
you for coming on. I really appreciate it.
It's always wonderful to connect with you, Eric, because you've got such a wonderfully sweet energy.
Speak softly and carry a giant spiritual 2x4.
Exactly. So you do fantastic work. Keep it up. I really appreciate it. It's what you're doing for the world.
Thank you. I appreciate that. All right. Aloha.
Aloha.
Have a wonderful, gorgeous day in Hawaii. I'm jealous of the sunset you're probably going to see tonight. And,
yep.
And I'm anxiously awaiting, the sun's out here in Greece, I'm anxiously awaiting for the Greek government to let us go out and play. We're all kind of in home confinement right now. I've been getting out and able to go around, but I have been, the sea, the Greek sea is so beautiful, and it's got a big "Do not go here" sign right now. And
well, of course, you do know that when you'll be allowed out, it's exactly at the right time when you're ready personally to be allowed out. You do know that, of course.
Of course.
So if you're anxious for it, do your work. Let's make it happen.
Okay.
A hui ho, as they say in Hawaii.
A hui ho. Bye, Nigel.
Right.
Have a wonderful day.
Thank you. Mahalo. Bye-bye.